Welcome back, sleepy traveler. Unclench your jaw, lower your shoulders, unravel the thoughts coiled like ivy around your spine. You're safe now. Tonight, we descend into a world both slithery and soothing, a world where medicine hisses, where healing drips from fangs, and where serpents, yes, actual snakes, were considered nature's little pharmacists. Before big pharma, before sterilized syringes and sterile white coats, there was something far more organic, something that could shed its skin, something with scales and secrets, something that didn't need a prescription, only a strong stomach. We're talking about snake oil, not just the metaphor for shady salesmen and miracle tonics, but the real thing extracted from real snakes, sold with real conviction, and believed to cure real ailments. You may find it hard to believe as you tuck yourself beneath your blanket of modern logic, but for centuries, snakes were not merely feared. They were revered, consumed, distilled, and applied liberally to everything from joint pain to spiritual sickness. In temples, they slithered beside priests. In apothecaries, they floated in jars. And in traveling medicine shows, they danced, curled around the promises of health, vigor, and eternal youth. So tonight, as the rain taps gently on the windows of history, we follow the trail of the serpent, through deserts, jungles, and dusty European towns, through superstition and pseudoscience, through oily flasks and venomous faith. Let your breath slow, let your mind loosen, let the whisper of the past lull you, because whether you're here for knowledge or just for nonsense, you're exactly where you need to be. And remember, in the old world of medicine, the cure often came with fangs. Let us imagine for a moment a pharmacy from the year 1643. Not your modern neon-lit cube where receipts are longer than your arm and most things come in blister packs. No, this is an apothecary. Wood-paneled, candlelit, rich with the scent of herbs, mildew, vinegar, and oddly burnt hair. Glass jars line the walls like a miniature museum of unsettling curiosities. Here, everything is vaguely moist. Even the wood feels damp with secrets. In the corner, next to the powdered rhino horn and pickled frogs, sits a proud little jar, half full, murky, and coiled. Inside, a snake, or what used to be one, now suspended in a cloudy amber liquid, like a sleeping curse preserved in brine. This, dear listener, is medicine, specifically snake wine, a tonic believed to boost vitality, cure paralysis, invigorate the blood, and possibly make you irresistible at town dances. Recipes varied, but the essence was simple. Insert dead snake into alcohol. Wait, drink, then hope. But this was no fringe belief. In 17th century Europe and Asia, snakes slithered their way into the very heart of medical thought. Apothecaries stocked their bodies, their venom, their skins, each part a potential panacea. The fat, good for gout. The skin, applied as a poultice to wounds. The venom, sometimes diluted to the point of homeopathic absurdity, yet still sold with conviction. And the bones, ground into fine powder and sprinkled into tea for spinal issues, melancholy, or just a bad mood. In Chinese medicine, which had a far older and more intricate relationship with reptiles, snakes were considered warm, yang, and full of life energy. A python's gallbladder was treasured like emerald. Cobra bile was administered for vision problems. And the dreaded five-step snake, whose bite was said to kill you in 5 paces, was believed to hold tremendous curative power if tamed properly. Of course, very few patients ever got to ask for a refund. Back in Europe, meanwhile, the symbolism ran just as deep. Snakes weren't just crawling creatures, they were transcendent. They shed their skin. They rejuvenated. They were medicine in motion, which is how we arrive at the curious logic of, if the snake can survive its own venom, maybe we can too if we drink just enough. Now, this leads us to the first great character in our Serpentine saga, the herbalist Vanni of Florence, 1581. Vanni, a man with spectacular eyebrows and no formal education, was known for one thing: his elixir of the coil. It was a bubbling concoction of snake marrow, red wine, nutmeg, and vinegar, kept warm over coals and stirred with an iron rod. He swore it cured anxiety, forgetfulness, baldness, and the urge to fornicate with ghosts, a surprisingly common concern in Florence that year. Customers came in droves, not necessarily because the medicine worked, but because Vanni performed it so well. He wore live snakes around his arms as bracelets. He called them his little brothers. He claimed to have been bitten 77 times and survived them all, thanks to his own brew. Whether this was true, or simply a side effect of drinking boiled snake spinal fluid every morning, we'll never know. What we do know is that Vanni died peacefully at age 87, surrounded by fans, students, and a deeply confused python named Gregory. But Vanni was no outlier. The use of snakes in medicine can be traced even further back, to the ancient Greeks, who associated snakes with Asclepius, the god of healing. You've probably seen his staff, a rod with a serpent twined around it. You may have thought, ah yes, medical symbol. What you didn't think is, this is an instruction manual for how to mix reptile with hope. Greek temples to Asclepius often housed actual non-venomous snakes that roamed freely. Visitors seeking healing would sleep in these sacred spaces overnight, and if a snake happened to slither over them in the darkness, this was considered a blessing. A deeply unsettling, scale-covered, cold-bellied blessing, but a blessing nonetheless. Some temples even prescribed contact with snake saliva, believing it imbued divine properties. Imagine waking up from your slumber and thinking, well, something licked me. That must mean the gods are working. Across the centuries, this logic remained. If snakes can heal themselves, surely they can heal us. If snakes are feared, maybe their essence makes us brave. If snakes are deadly, perhaps their venom holds the antidote to everything wrong inside us. It was a compelling mix of myth, metaphor, and mild poisoning. And so, as apothecaries and snake charmers began to overlap, a curious cultural figure emerged. The snake doctor, usually not a doctor, rarely even literate, but always enthusiastic. He'd arrive in a village with a cart full of jars and stories. He'd wear a hat made of leather and bravado, and he'd shout, "Behold, the cure for all your miseries." He'd describe how this very snake, held aloft by the tail, once cured his cousin's blindness, or removed his neighbor's warts, or made an old widow dance the mazurka again. Crowds gathered, coins clinked, and people drank. Some claimed to feel better immediately. Some developed stomach cramps and passed out. Some woke up days later, refreshed and slightly afraid of garden hoses. And the snake doctor? He was already in the next town. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how strange the human mind can be when it's desperate. You've got a problem. Joint pain, fever, mysterious chest rattles, or perhaps the creeping dread that your spleen is plotting against you. Modern solutions? None. So what do? Obviously, you reach for venom. Yes, that thing designed by nature specifically to ruin your afternoon. The biochemical weapon stored in a snake's glands, delivered via hypodermic fong. And somehow humans looked at this and said, what if we drank it? But first, let's step back to ancient India. In Ayurvedic medicine, snake venom was considered a fire element, hot, intense, transformative. When diluted properly, it was used in tiny, ritualistic doses to cleanse the body, especially in cases of what was known as sluggish blood, a condition that included everything from laziness to impolite thoughts about your neighbor's goat. The venom would be mixed with honey, clarified butter, and powdered lotus root, and administered by someone with the calm demeanor of a man who might die in 5 seconds. And yet, many swore it worked. Patients reported feeling clearer, lighter, more snake-like in a good way. Their joints cracked less. Their dreams became vivid. And in one particularly well-documented case, a man named Dheeraj claimed he could understand squirrels. Was it true? No one knows, but the squirrels never complained. Centuries later, in Renaissance Europe, the practice returned, now with a distinctly theatrical flair. Enter Baron Friedrich von Morgel, a German aristocrat with gout, a limp, and a fascination with toxins. The Baron believed that the best way to defeat poison was with poison. He collected snakes from all over the continent and kept them in a warm, velvet-lined room he called the Chapel of Purity. Every week, his servant would milk the venom from one of the snakes, carefully, lovingly, then mix it with rose water, powdered emerald, and a single feather from a black swan. This concoction, called Essentia Mortis Vivens, or Essence of the Living Death, was sipped from a goblet carved from stag antler. The Baron swore it reduced inflammation, improved his posture, and gave him dreams of flying over Hungary. Visitors were both enchanted and horrified. One wrote, "The Baron does not age, nor, however, does he blink." But it wasn't all aristocratic fantasy. In parts of Russia, midwives used tiny snake bites to induce labor, believing the sudden shock and heat of the venom would stimulate contractions. In West Africa, some healers let venomous snakes bite infected limbs, just enough to wake the blood. And in rural France, a folk remedy for depression included rubbing diluted snake venom onto one's temples while reciting poetry about cheese. It was a global phenomenon, united by one principle: the cure must hurt a little. And then came the snake pills. These were precisely what they sound like. Small capsules, usually wax or bread-based, filled with powdered snake bits and traces of venom. Sold in traveling markets, they were marketed as cure-alls. Each pill promised to cleanse the liver, brighten the eyes, restore manly vigor, prevent curses, and, in one version, make your handwriting more elegant. Did they work? Let's say this: no one ever asked for a second box, but no one ever sued either. In some cases, however, the results were real. A curious example comes from Dr. Haruto Tanaka, a Japanese physician in the 1800s who experimented with minuscule doses of snake venom as an immune stimulant. He tested it on rats, then rabbits, then, famously, on his mother-in-law. Her arthritis, he claimed, improved dramatically, although she did begin hissing softly whenever she disapproved of dinner. He presented his findings to the Imperial Society of Medicine, who responded with cautious interest and one anonymous letter suggesting that he might be too close to his snakes. His final paper, titled "The Venom Within," proposed that low doses of danger created strength. It became wildly popular among samurai, who viewed snake venom not only as a medicine, but as a test of character. Some warriors took to wearing small snake bone pendants around their necks, carved with kanji for fear and balance. Others practiced bite ceremonies, where they allowed a non-lethal snake to bite them in front of an audience, then calmly sipped green tea while reciting poetry. One samurai famously declared, "I do not need armor. I have tasted death and lived." He died 4 months later from completely unrelated reasons, a falling cart full of radishes. But the legend stuck. Even in Victorian England, the obsession found a foothold. A London shop called the Writhing Remedy opened in 1842, offering tonics infused with adder venom. The advertisements claimed the drink could make your nerves as silent as a serpent in grass. Customers were offered 3 levels: cautious, brave, and unhinged. Most stuck with cautious, which was basically sherry. But a few daring souls took unhinged, which, according to the records, caused hallucinations of talking mice, dreams of floating in giant eggs, and in one case, the spontaneous desire to yodel in ancient Greek. The shop closed within the year, but the idea did not. Today, we call it venom therapy, used in labs, in cancer research, in pain management. Snake venom is used in minute, controlled doses as a base for drugs that treat blood pressure and blood clots. Turns out the snake did have some secrets to share. But make no mistake, this is modern science. Measured, tested, refined. Unlike, say, Madame Claret, a French healer who once claimed she could extract venom from a live snake using only sound vibrations and erotic poetry. She disappeared in 1901, but her cat was found wearing her shoes. Next time you hear the phrase, snake oil, remember, it wasn't always a scam. Sometimes it was just poisonous enough to be interesting. Let that thought slither into your dreams tonight. Now, let's slip out of the candlelit chambers of herbalists and nobles and step into the muddy, noisy, perfumed chaos of the traveling medicine show. It's a warm day in 1890, somewhere in Missouri. The town smells like dust, horse, and overly hopeful popcorn. Children run barefoot. Women lean on railings. Men spit into barrels with varying degrees of accuracy. And down the road rolls a painted wagon, adorned with hand-drawn snakes and very exaggerated claims. It reads, Dr. Tiberius Lickshaw's Serpentine Solutions, cure what ails ya. Below that, in smaller print, now with 67% more actual snake. The music begins, banjo, tambourine, and something suspiciously like a flute made from bone. From the back of the wagon leaps Dr. Lickshaw himself. He's not a doctor. He may not even be Lickshaw, but he wears a top hat with a rubber cobra curled around it and a smile wider than medically advised. He bellows, "Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and ambiguous minors, are you tired? Are you weak? Do your joints squeak like barn hinges in the night?" The crowd nods. Of course they do. They're alive in 1890. Well, fret no more, because I bring you the miraculous, the magnificent, the mildly venomous Lickshaw's Serpent Elixir. He lifts a dark green bottle. The label features a rattlesnake in a tuxedo, smiling. The ingredients, he claims, are a blend of rattlesnake venom, just a pinch, eastern diamondback extract, sassafras, moonlight, and something called electroether. No one asks questions. They're too mesmerized. And besides, he's juggling two snakes. Real ones. One is named Barbara. The other is just angry. Behind him, a curtain is pulled back to reveal a young man with suspiciously glowing teeth, who claims to have been cured of death itself by the elixir. He gives a very convincing zombie moan and then cartwheels into a pile of sawdust. People applaud. Coins fly. Bottles sell. Later, someone will say, "You know, my lumbago did feel better after that." And someone else will reply, "That's because the bottle was 40% whiskey." But the illusion was powerful. Across America and beyond, the snake oil salesman became legend. Not just for the elixirs, but for the performance, the storytelling, the hats, the snakes with names. Was the product effective? Almost never. Was it dangerous? Only on Thursdays. But in a world where real medicine often involved leeches, burning metal, or being told to walk it off until you faint, the idea of a magical snake potion sounded oddly pleasant. And the snake, oh, the snake, it had everything a good cure needed. Mystery, exoticism, just enough fear to feel powerful. And the handy trait of not being able to sue for misrepresentation. Some sellers even bottled fake venom, a mixture of pepper water, vinegar, and powdered eggshell. They demonstrate its power by dipping a needle into it and pretending to go numb, or, in more theatrical cases, mildly possessed. Others got more creative. In 1903, a man named Slick Willie Jameson performed nightly serpent baptisms, in which he dunked customers in a barrel of water that allegedly contained the essence of 20 cobras. The water smelled suspiciously like pickle juice, but customers swore they came out rejuvenated. One woman claimed her bunions disappeared. Another said she remembered her wedding night for the first time in 40 years. A third just enjoyed being wet. Not everyone was so gullible, of course. The American Medical Association, in time, cracked down on snake oil sales, labeling them as fraudulent, ineffective, and often alcoholic. But the myth persisted. The image stuck. A charismatic charlatan, a bottle of dreams, and a snake somewhere in the background, possibly with a monocle. Even abroad, the idea evolved. In Brazil, a figure called Curandero das Serpents, the snake healer, traveled through Amazon villages with jars of anacondas suspended in murky liquids. His catchphrase, loosely translated, was, "Fear not the coil, for within it lies the cure." He offered ointments, pastes, and small edible cubes that were allegedly blessed by snake spirits. Most were made of dried yucca and lies. Still, he gained a following. Children brought him frogs as tribute. Old women whispered that he could summon thunder. And at least 2 rival healers vanished under mysterious circumstances, although one reappeared 6 months later selling candles shaped like lizards. It wasn't always harmless, of course. Some elixirs caused allergic reactions. Some contained lead. One traveling seller in New Zealand mixed his tonic with mercury and claimed it made bones sing with clarity. It did not. It made bones fall out. But in the dreamy, theatrical space of belief, the snake retained its status as a medicine bringer, not because it worked necessarily, but because it felt true. The cold bottle, the story, the hiss, the idea that something so feared could also be your salvation. And that maybe, just maybe, if you swallowed a little danger, you'd come out stronger, or drunker, possibly both. Next time someone calls something snake oil, remember, it was never just about the product. It was the hope, the show, the man with the hat and the bottle and the grin. And the snake, always the snake, curled somewhere just out of sight. Long before the snake slithered into pharmacies, curled its way into temples. In many ancient cultures, snakes were not just creatures. They were omens. They were gods. They were physicians with scales. Let's begin in ancient Mesopotamia, where serpents symbolized both chaos and healing. A contradiction? Absolutely. But this is religion, not logic. Temples to Ninjashida, a Sumerian deity, often featured entwined serpents carved into walls. His name roughly translates to Lord of the Good Tree, which sounds friendly until you realize he also ruled the underworld. He was often depicted with two snakes rising from his shoulders like very opinionated scarves. Worshippers came to these temples with illness, injury, or suspicion that their soul had sprung a leak. They'd offer food, coins, or modest poetry. Priests, in turn, would burn incense, chant in soothing syllables, and occasionally present a live snake as part of the healing ritual. If the snake looked at you, healing was near. If the snake ignored you, you needed to donate more grain. Far to the west, in ancient Greece, the snake was less moody and more official. The god Asclepius, patron of medicine, carried a staff with a single serpent curled around it. This image survives today as the symbol of medicine, although frequently confused with the caduceus, which has two snakes and technically belongs to Hermes, god of commerce and light thievery. Temples to Asclepius were built as early health resorts. Patients would sleep in a sacred chamber called the abaton, where non-venomous snakes were allowed to roam freely. Imagine this. You're sick. You lie down on a stone bed. You say a prayer. You close your eyes. And then, somewhere in the dark, you feel it. A cool, dry ripple across your ankle. You do not scream, because that would be rude. Instead, you whisper, "Thank you," and pray the snake doesn't mistake your earlobe for a snack. Priests interpreted the snake's movements, as well as the patient's dreams, to diagnose and prescribe, sometimes herbs, sometimes bloodletting, sometimes affirm "you're fine, go home." In some cases, snakes were encouraged to lick the wound, believed to transfer divine saliva. This was considered the highest form of healing, unless, of course, the snake started tasting other parts. Then it was divine confusion. These healing temples spread widely. In Rome, soldiers built shrines to Asclepius. In Gaul, travelers left stone carvings of serpents in gratitude for healing. And in Egypt, snakes slithered alongside gods like Isis, Thoth, and Wadjet, who appeared as a cobra with a flair for eyeliner. But let's not forget the snake's darker side. In Christian tradition, it was the serpent who whispered Eve into enlightenment or doom, depending on your theological flavor. Yet even in this context, serpents weren't entirely villainous. Medieval monks sometimes kept snakes in their cloisters, not as pets, but as living metaphors for the dual nature of sin and salvation. They'd study the snake's behavior and try to apply it to theology. One monk wrote, "Lo, the serpent is silent, as should be the tongue of man in temptation." Another simply noted, "Snakes do not eat lentils." In more rural monastic settings, legends formed around healing snakes, beings touched by God, capable of curing wounds, calming madness, or revealing heretics. If a snake entered your chapel, you were to let it pass. If it coiled on your altar, you were to pray. If it bit your bishop, you were to reassess your bishop. But it wasn't just Europe. In India, the Nagas, serpent beings, were considered divine protectors of water, fertility, and cosmic balance. Some temples, like the one at Kuk Subramanya, still host rituals involving live snakes, or at least symbolic representations. Pilgrims walk barefoot over stone carvings. Priests chant to the rhythm of rattles, not rattlesnakes. Fortunately, milk is poured into snake holes as offerings, an act both devotional and optimistically cautious. In some parts of Africa, serpents were ancestral spirits. The Dahomey people of West Africa revered the rainbow serpent Dan, a protector and healer. In ritual dances, women painted their bodies with coiling patterns and moved in serpentine steps, believing the spirit of the snake moved through them. In Haitian Vodou, the Loa Dambala appears as a great white serpent who brings blessings and healing. Offerings of eggs, milk, and white cloth are made to him. Those possessed by Dambala speak in hissing sounds, roll on the floor, and, most critically, refuse to wear pants. It is said that Dambala loves purity and loathes conflict. He also enjoys naps near rivers. Truly, a relatable deity. Even in shamanic Siberian practices, serpents are seen as underground spirits, messengers between worlds. Shamans would wear snakeskin belts, speak in forked tongues, literally, some split theirs, and meditate in snow pits, hoping to dream with the serpent mind. The snake was the bridge between sickness and healing, earth and sky, life and whatever comes next. And of course, this spiritual adoration eventually found its way into products. Holy snake oils, blessed snake talismans, snake charms woven from hair, copper, and fever dreams. One traveling sect in 17th century Bavaria believed drinking from a cup shaped like a snake's mouth allowed truth to pour directly into the soul. They also believed you shouldn't bathe on Thursdays. Their sermons were popular but smelled unusual. So when we talk about snakes as medicine, we're not just talking about biology. We're talking about belief. The belief that the creature closest to the dirt might be the one who understands how to rise. That something feared might hold love coiled in its belly, and that sometimes healing isn't just a pill or potion. It's a story, a slither, a whisper in the dark from something older than words. If venom was the drama of snake medicine, and religion was its poetry, then snake fat, dear listener, was its cooking oil. We now return to the humble apothecary. The room smells of rosemary, mildew, something vaguely medicinal, and... is that bacon? No, it's snake. Yes, on a cast iron pan over a low flame, a coil of snake meat is sizzling. Not for dinner, though that happened too, but for rendering. This was a common sight in apothecaries from China to Germany to the dusty towns of 19th century Texas. Snake fat, extracted carefully, lovingly from the belly and sides, was believed to have remarkable healing properties, especially for sore joints, swollen feet, stiff backs, aching shoulders, and, according to one pamphlet, spirits dampened by excessive stooping. The process was simple. Obtain a snake. Remove everything you don't need. Heat the rest in a pan until the fat liquefies. Strain it. Bottle it. Rub it on someone who looks like they've been working in a mine since birth. Done correctly, it yielded a golden, slightly fishy-smelling substance. Done poorly, it yielded trauma. In traditional Chinese medicine, this practice had a long, respectable history. The fat of the Chinese water snake, particularly the Enhydrus chinensis, was treasured. It was believed to penetrate deeply into the joints, chasing out wind, a poetic way of describing inflammation and pain. Snake fat was often blended with camphor, ginger, or musk, and massaged into the skin of warriors, farmers, and the tragically ambitious. Some formulations included a little arsenic, just enough to encourage circulation and discourage long-term use. And it wasn't just the Chinese. In Poland, rural healers rendered the fat of adder snakes, mixing it with lard and beeswax to create balms. In Brazil, snake fat was applied to snake bites, which may seem ironic or like snake-based hazing, but was said to reduce swelling. In India, it was used to coat surgical tools because if you're going to slice someone open, why not do it with a snake-slicked blade? One curious account comes from a Hungarian mountain village where snake grease was believed to heal frostbite, Polish boots, prevent ghost possession. These were often confused. Now let's talk branding. In the American frontier, snake fat became snake oil liniment, typically sold in tiny glass bottles with names like Dr. Coil's Comfort Rub, Viper's Vigor Balm, Slither Soothed, for your joints and your marriage. These bottles featured exaggerated claims and artwork. Snakes wrapped around beautiful women or rugged cowboys kicking gout into the sun. Some ads boasted, heals horses and humans equally, which was not entirely comforting. But here's the strange thing. Some of it actually worked. A study from the 1980s analyzed old bottles of imported Chinese snake oil and found it contained high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA, useful for inflammation. Much more effective than the mostly mineral oil and turpentine mixtures passed off by Western snake oil peddlers. So, ironically, the original snake oil wasn't a scam. The scam was the copycat version sold with fake accents and a dancing mongoose. Back in Europe, recipes grew ever more creative. In 1712, a French apothecary named Lucien d'Orme created a soap from snake fat and goat milk. He claimed it smoothed the skin and the soul. His customers included noble women, opera singers, and one extremely wrinkled cardinal. In England, Mrs. Whipple's soothing salve combined snake fat with lavender and powdered oyster shell. The label read, "For chafed elbows, stubborn children, and melancholy." We don't know if it worked, but sales were excellent. In the Middle East, it was customary to blend snake oil with myrrh and date extract, producing a dark, sweet-smelling ointment used for headaches and, curiously, beard growth. Some claimed it caused dreams of deserts and whispered secrets. Others said it just made the pillow slippery. Let us also not forget the snake fat candle, crafted by melting the grease with tallow and beeswax, then shaping it into thick, oily columns. These candles were burned during healing rituals, believed to illuminate the toxins inside the body, which may explain the coughing. In all these cases, the central idea remained. Snake fat, soft, golden, vaguely reptilian, transferred something. Strength, agility, slitheriness, perhaps even the ability to nap on cold stones. There were even culinary crossover moments. In parts of rural China, snake was stewed and the fat skimmed and saved, later repurposed as a topical balm. One folk belief stated that whatever cooks your pain may also cook your soup. And yes, that is both a proverb and a warning. In Vietnam, snake fat mixed with rice wine was taken as a tonic, believed to lubricate the joints from the inside. A man in Hanoi once claimed he could do cartwheels for 6 minutes straight after a shot. He never proved it, but his optimism was inspiring. Of course, some took it too far. A short-lived German practice called full-body serpent rub involved coating the patient in warm snake fat from head to toe, then wrapping them in linen and letting them marinate. Side effects included clarity, nausea, and intense marital awkwardness. In the end, though, snake fat had a legacy. Not because it was magical, not because it was scientifically infallible, but because it was tactile, real. Something you could feel in your hands, warm on your skin, and believe in for at least 5 minutes. It smelled strange. It looked exotic. And if nothing else, it made for an excellent story. So, the next time your shoulder aches, imagine a small apothecary in 1782. A man in a greasy apron, a pan hissing quietly, a snake curled beside him, judging your posture. And remember, sometimes healing is just a little slippery, a luxury, where the rules of logic are quietly ushered out the side door, and anything, absolutely anything, can become a treatment if it's expensive enough and comes with a small silver spoon. In the realm of absurd medicine, the rich never settle for ointments in jars. They want experiences, and so, naturally, snakes slithered into spas. Let us begin in Vienna, 1904, at the exclusive Haus der Schlange, the House of the Snake. This was no ordinary bathhouse. It featured high ceilings, velvet curtains, and a staff trained in both massage and mild herpetology. Guests would recline on warm marble slabs as non-venomous snakes were gently placed onto their backs. The creatures, usually pythons or boas, would slither slowly across the body, their weight and motion said to release tension, align the spine, encourage primal self-awareness. Clients described the experience as soothing, exotic, and like being gently judged by a sock full of muscles. The treatments had names like the silent coil, viper's embrace, reptilian rejuvenation deluxe, which included cucumber water and a souvenir feather, for no clear reason. One enthusiastic reviewer wrote in a Viennese wellness journal, "I came in arthritic and Austrian. I left reborn with the posture of a jungle cat. At 40 kronen per session, it was outrageously expensive, which of course made it more popular." Meanwhile, in Paris, the Maison de la Peau Vive, House of the Living Skin, offered facials using crushed snake scale powder blended into a cream with rose oil and crushed pearl. It was said to exfoliate the soul. Socialites would gather in candlelit rooms, faces glistening with reptilian radiance, sipping lukewarm chamomile from tiny crystal thimbles. The more daring patrons opted for microstings, in which a specialized practitioner gently pricked the skin with a snake tooth dipped in diluted venom. This, they believed, encouraged cellular anxiety, which somehow made the skin firmer. Yes, cellular anxiety, because nothing says youth like microscopic panic. Elsewhere, the Duchess of Northumberland, a woman known for her affection for rare birds, silk umbrellas, and aggressive skincare, maintained a private snake conservatory. Inside, pythons lounged lazily in glass cases beside jars of venom-infused cream. Her daily regimen included a morning soak in snake-infused milk, a light lunch of grapefruit and suspicion, and an evening massage with adder essence, a preparation that smelled like lavender and revenge. She lived to 96. Her elbows, allegedly, never wrinkled. But the madness wasn't confined to Europe. In Japan, during the Taisho period, elite patrons of secretive spa retreats in Kyoto sought the Yamakagashi bath, a ritual involving warm spring water, rice flour, and the essence of tiger keelback snakes. According to practitioners, these snakes held the spirit of stillness and could pass that on through immersion. Guests would soak in silence, covered with cloth, while priests chanted haiku to the rhythm of dripping bamboo water clocks. The result? Mild dizziness, spiritual confusion, and baby-soft feet. Even in New York, the Serpent scene slithered into the Gilded Age. At the Vanderbilt Healing Parlor, a private club for people who had never cooked their own meals, one could request the snakeskin wrap, a body treatment involving heated cloths dusted with dried python skin and citrus peels. Clients were mummified in this concoction and left to sweat out toxins and opinions. A man named Bartholomew Pennypickle, yes, truly, reported that after 3 sessions, his back stopped cracking and he remembered the names of all his nephews. A success. In Russia, eccentric nobles bathed in tubs of snake fat and vodka, claiming it invigorated the skin and smelled like victory. Some added caviar because why not? Meanwhile, in Italy, opera singers believed gargling with a mixture of snake bile and lemon strengthened their vocal cords. The practice was called La Voce del Serpent, the voice of the serpent. Whether it worked or not, no one had the courage to tell them it was disgusting. And then, inevitably, came the perfumes. Ah yes, the crowning jewel of luxurious absurdity. Perfumers in France, desperate for novelty, began creating snake-inspired fragrances with names like Venin Savage, Wild Venom, Shed Number 5, L'Elixir du Croc, the Fong's Elixir. They claimed to capture the essence of serpentine elegance. Notes included black pepper, smoked myrrh, dried jungle leaf, and a suspicious amount of actual musk gland. Celebrities of the day were obsessed. One ballerina demanded that her dressing room be misted with snake mist before every performance. A playwright required a drop of Cobra's lament behind each ear to summon the proper mood for melancholy. No one wrote better tragic monologues while reeking of python. By the 1930s, snake-based spa treatments were in full absurd bloom. There were serpent saunas, Fong acupuncture, venom detox foot soaks, and at least one case of therapeutic snake cuddling, where a man in California charged $15 to wrap you in a sleepy boa and say kind things about your posture. And let's not forget the snakefoot massage, popular in a short-lived Berlin salon, where therapists massaged your feet while balancing a garter snake on their heads for cosmic alignment. Did any of this work? Well, people reported feeling rejuvenated, confused, lightly judged by reptiles, and weirdly excited about life again, which in the realm of spa experiences is really all one can ask. So what is the lesson here? That absurdity has no price ceiling, that wealth and eccentricity make excellent dance partners, and that if you tell a rich person something is sacred, rare, and infused with python, they will absolutely pay you for it, even if it's just coconut oil and a hiss. As you drift to sleep tonight, imagine a candlelit marble room, a snake slithering calmly across your shoulders, a woman in silk whispering, "Breathe in, breathe out, and let the serpent carry your stress away." Not every miracle needs velvet curtains. Sometimes it lives in a jar behind the lentils. While aristocrats were soaking in venom and whispering to pythons, ordinary people, farmers, weavers, blacksmiths, goat huggers, were busy making their own cures. And where did they look for healing? To the garden? Sometimes. To the church? Often. But frequently to the kitchen cabinet, where, in a dark, slightly sticky corner, sat an unmarked jar of snake. Let's start with Eastern Europe. In the Carpathian foothills, it was common for households to keep a bottle of snake vodka. This wasn't a trendy bar stunt. It was a medicine passed down through generations like a family recipe for trauma. The ingredients: one dead snake, one bottle of grain alcohol, patience, a complete lack of modern regulation. The preparation involved submerging the snake, often a grass or viper variety, into the bottle and sealing it for 21 days. Some added garlic, herbs, or a single red chili to give it courage. This concoction was sipped in tiny amounts for stomach aches, toothaches, sadness, in-law visits. If the snake had curled into a knot before death, it was considered extra potent. If it floated upright after infusion, it was a sign the cure would lift the soul. If it exploded during fermentation, well, it had opinions. In rural Italy, grandmothers kept olio del serpent, snake oil, beside the olive oil, used for rubbing on sore backs, dabbing behind children's ears during storms, polishing rosaries, occasionally cooking, though this was not recommended unless you enjoyed meals that tasted like regret. In Turkey, ilan kei, snake tea, was a hot topic, literally, made from the dried skin of non-venomous snakes boiled with sage and wild mint. It was drunk during the winter to ward off colds and evil neighbors. Recipes varied wildly. Some steeped the skin for hours. Others just waved it over the pot and hoped for the best. One village used snake-shaped pasta for symbolic support. And in Appalachia, old-timers made snake poultices by soaking dried snake meat in vinegar and wrapping it in cloth. This was applied to swollen joints, spider bites, and once, allegedly, to a haunted banjo. Did it work? Well, the banjo never played by itself again. Meanwhile, in Mongolia, nomadic healers carried small pouches of snake bones, ground into powder. This was sprinkled into goat milk, stirred counterclockwise, and drunk in silence. The silence was important. It was said that talking during ingestion disturbed the snake's spirit, leading to sneezing or unwanted pregnancy. Back in Germany, Snake butter, a mix of snake fat and churned cream, was spread on the chest to treat coughs. It also allegedly repelled suitors, which may have been intentional. And in Mexico, the curandra, a folk healer, would dry snake heads and keep them in the spice rack. When someone fell ill, she would boil one, whisper prayers, then pour the broth onto a cloth and place it on the patient's forehead. No one enjoyed it, but most people recovered. Coincidence? Or spicy serpent salvation? Even in Scotland, there were tales of adder whiskey, where a bit of snake skin was dropped into a flask before long journeys. It was said to prevent snake bites, which is perhaps the spiritual equivalent of duct taping garlic to your steering wheel and calling it an airbag. Let's not forget the superstitions. In some villages, keeping a dried snake tail in your pantry would prevent spoiled food. Hanging a snake skeleton above the door protected the household from gossip. Cooking over a snake bone-infused fire brought good harvests and dreams of your ancestors making slightly disappointed faces. But not all uses were symbolic. Many recipes were intensely practical in their own terrifying way. One 19th century Russian almanac describes a snakeskin compress soaked in horseradish vodka, applied to the feet to revive the winter-dulled soul. Another pamphlet from rural France offers a cure for headaches. Take a small, polite snake, rub it gently across the forehead while reciting a complaint. Release it into the neighbor's garden. Whether this relieved the headache or just passed the problem to someone else is unclear. But here's the truth. These people weren't fools. They weren't playing pretend. They were surviving, using what they had, what they believed, and what their grandmother had sworn by between muttered warnings about werewolves and poorly cooked beans. The snake in these homespun remedies became a familiar spirit. It wasn't exotic. It wasn't noble. It was just there, in the jar on the shelf, watching over the garlic. A protector, a remedy, a slightly alarming spice. And maybe that was enough. So the next time you open your cupboard and see something strange at the back, a forgotten bottle, a suspicious jar, an unlabeled tin, ask yourself, could this cure my knee? Or is it a portal? Or both? And maybe, just maybe, remember that in kitchens around the world, beneath calendars, behind flour sacks, the snake waits, quiet, pickled, patient. And now, as the candle flickers low, as the final drops of snake oil slide back into the bottle, we arrive at the end. But not the end of the snake. No, it never really leaves. In fact, it's still here, curled quietly in the corners of our science, our marketing, our fear, our faith. You see, while most snake remedies have slithered into history, some survived, adapted, evolved, much like the snake itself. Today, in pristine labs with white floors and even whiter coats, researchers extract venom from rattlesnakes, cobras, vipers, but not to pickle it, not to bathe in it, not to whisper to it under moonlight. They use it to create blood pressure medication, anticoagulants, painkillers more powerful than morphine, treatments for strokes, heart attacks, even cancer. The venom that once promised death on a forest path now delivers life from a hospital bed. It's poetic in a medical meets metal band kind of way. And yet the cultural echo remains. Even if you've never touched a snake, you know the phrase, snake oil. It lives on, no longer a tonic, but a warning. a term for lies dressed in lab coats, for confidence men with business cards, for that supplement your uncle swears cured his back, gout, and inability to understand modern art. But beneath the cynicism lies something older, more sincere, a whisper, soft and forked. What if it works? What if the answer is strange? What if the cure isn't in the tablet, but in the tale? After all, most people who rubbed fat on their joints or drank venom with ginger weren't idiots. They were desperate, curious, or simply tired of being tired. They didn't believe because they were dumb. They believed because belief was sometimes the only thing stronger than pain. And belief, my dear dreamer, is a medicine all its own. Even now, you'll find traces. A yoga class named Viper Flow, a beauty serum with shed skin peptides, a motivational speaker who calls himself the human cobra. The snake still sells, still slithers through the subconscious, still offers its ancient deal. I may be venom, but maybe, just maybe, I'm what you need. And isn't that the essence of absurd medicine? That tightrope walk between harm and hope, between placebo and panacea, between a hiss and a hallelujah. Somewhere in that space between science and story, between myth and molecule, the snake laughs, not cruelly, not smugly, just knowingly, as if to say, you never really understood me, but you always trusted me, and maybe that was enough. So as you lay your head down tonight, think not of the horror stories, not of the bites, the fangs, the shadow in the grass. Think instead of a flickering apothecary lamp, a grandmother's warm, suspicious-smelling salve, a traveling man with a top hat, a bottle, and too much confidence, a monk who whispered thanks to a snake that slept at his feet, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find a small part of yourself curling up next to theirs, coiling softly into sleep, because no matter what the label says, the real medicine is already working. It always has been, and it always will be. Good night, dreamer. May your joints be supple, your thoughts slither smoothly, and your sleep be deeply, deeply absurd. You thought it ended, didn't you? The hiss went quiet. The jar was sealed. The curtain fell. But some stories coil, because even after the medicine was swallowed, the snake still watched, not from a bottle this time, from the edge of the fire, from under the bed, from the part of your mind that still wonders if maybe the shadows are full of cures. Welcome, dear dreamer, to the other half of the Serpent's story, the part they didn't write in the medical scrolls, the part whispered at night, by candlelight, behind locked doors, with fingers crossed and snakes coiled in bowls of salt. Because yes, snakes were healers, but they were also summoned. In every culture that feared them, someone tried to use them, not just physically, but magically, to bend desire, to manipulate fate, to slip between the cracks of the world. Let's begin in ancient Babylon, where snake-shaped amulets were used not to ward off illness, but to transfer it. The logic was simple. If you couldn't kill the sickness, you could trick it. You'd place a carved serpent under your bed, whisper your symptoms into it like a living diary, and leave it outside overnight. If the amulet was gone in the morning, the sickness had moved on, presumably into your neighbor or a passing goat. Meanwhile, in Alexandria, sorcerers mixed snake blood with ink to write binding spells, contracts of fate. They'd use quills made from crow feathers and parchment made from tanned eel skin. Each letter curved like a scale, each word coiled with intent. To curse, to seduce, to heal, or sometimes just to keep the fleas away. In medieval Europe, the serpent tongue potion was a coveted black market item. It was said that drying and powdering the forked tongue of a serpent, then mixing it with wine and clove oil, allowed the drinker to speak in dreams, persuade stubborn animals, and, most notably, force confessions. Kings kept flasks of it hidden. Wives slipped it into soups. Priests debated its morality in hushed Latin. The Catholic Church, of course, condemned it outright, but bishops were still found with serpent jars in their gardens. For botany, they claimed, in West African Vodun, certain priestesses worked with serpent spirits, not Damballa, the calm one, but his more expressive cousins. They believed snake skins could be infused with emotion, then burned during ritual dances to release that feeling into the world. Joy, grief, lust, revenge, all stored in a shed scale, like a scab with opinions. In Eastern Europe, love spells involving snakes were common and often unsettling. One recipe reads, "Take a lock of your beloved's hair, wrap it in a dried snakeskin, bury it beneath their threshold. If they dream of you within 3 nights, the spell has taken. If they dream of you as a snake, you must bite your own lip and wait." Some took this literally. There are recorded cases of folk injuries from love magic-related lip biting in 17th century Poland. Historians try to sound objective, but even their footnotes crackle with disbelief. Elsewhere, in the deserts of Persia, certain desert shamans used the venom of horned vipers in dream rituals. A single drop, dried and smoked in a pipe with sage and hyssop, was believed to unlock visions of the world below, a dimension of snakes, tunnels, mirrors, and whispering ancestors with too many teeth. The experience was often described as terrifying, enlightening, like being eaten and loved at the same time. Participants came back changed. Some refused to wear shoes ever again. Others became compulsive storytellers. One man began speaking only in rhymes for a full lunar cycle. In rural Romania, snake-based protection circles were drawn with chalk and crushed scale. Children with nightmares were placed inside, and the family chanted a rhyme. "Where the serpent sleeps, no fear shall creep. Where the coil lies, the crying dies." Even skeptics admitted the rhyme helped, though one child claimed he simply pretended to sleep so he wouldn't be given more cabbage. And then there were the charms. Oh, the charms. Snake teeth worn on cords to deflect lies. Snake vertebrae baked into bread to preserve youth. Snake eyes, yes, the actual eyes, dried and sewn into pouches to see secrets. Although many simply found them unpleasant to carry, especially during heat waves. But perhaps the most haunting magic comes from Finland, where old records describe a ritual known as Karmavelis, the serpent walk. A person suffering from incurable sadness would be taken into the forest at dusk. They would carry a jar containing a small live snake. They'd walk in silence for 7 turns around a specific birch tree, whispering their sorrow into the jar. On the final turn, the jar would be opened. If the snake slithered toward the sun, the sadness was lifted. If it curled into the earth, the person was to return home and sleep for 3 days. There are no further instructions. So no, The snake's power didn't end with ointments and oils, continued in shadow, in whispered rituals and secret pockets, in spells scribbled on the back of recipes, and tears stirred into cauldrons of honey and hiss, because some wounds aren't just of the body, and some medicines need a little magic. For as long as humans have aged, they've wanted to stop. Hair grays, skin folds, bones whisper, "Please sit down." And somewhere, deep in the psyche, a question coils like a hungry serpent. What if I didn't have to? Enter the snake stage left, not just as a healer, not just as a whisperer, but as a symbol of rebirth, of shedding, of starting over. And for many, that wasn't a metaphor. It was a recipe. Let's begin in ancient Egypt, where the serpent wasn't just a danger in the sand. It was a key to longevity. Texts from the Pyramid of Unas describe rituals in which pharaohs consumed parts of snakes, liver, bile, sometimes whole serpent stews, as part of funerary preparation. The idea: if you imbibe a creature that renews itself, you might trick death into passing you by. One particular elixir, the breath of Wadjet, included crushed green snake, lotus root, palm wine, and powdered obsidian for texture. It was taken by the spoonful, usually while chanting about the sun's eternal journey and trying not to gag. In early Chinese Taoist alchemy, the idea of immortality through transformation found its most slippery champion in the form of the black serpent elixir. This wasn't poetic branding, it was literal. The ingredients: dried skin of the black viper, mercury obviously, realgar, arsenic's fun cousin, pine resin, and an ounce of patient isolation. It was cooked in a sealed crucible for 49 days, then swallowed on the eve of the solstice. If your bones vibrated and your breath smelled of trees, congratulations, you were ascending. If you exploded, well, spiritual combustion had a noble history. In Hellenistic Greece, philosophers obsessed with the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail. To them, it represented the eternal return, death feeding life, time consuming itself, and the universe curling back into its own belly. One fringe sect, the Ouroboreans, believed that consuming snake meat in an unbroken circle, literally chewing it clockwise on a silver plate, allowed them to digest time. No one knows if it worked, but they chewed with remarkable intensity. Fast forward to 13th century Persia, and you'll find texts from the House of Avicenna describing a tonic known as Zar-e-Javid, the eternal poison. Consisted of cobra venom, honey, gold flakes, and the distilled tears of a midwife. Don't ask. It was believed that microdoses of controlled death, taken over years, would immunize the body against time itself. The catch? Most didn't have years, or a midwife with good tier discipline. In Elizabethan England, alchemists blended snakes into their ever-hopeful philosophers' broths. Brews meant to align the humors, thin the blood, and keep one's chin impressively firm into old age. A popular variation, Drake's Reversal, included powdered serpent spine, aged cherry, 2 rose petals, and the whisper of a virgin's regret. Is sold well in noble circles, not because it worked, but because it made you feel like you deserved to live forever. In the court of Louis XIV, the Sun King himself reportedly consulted an alchemist named Dusang, who offered him a serpent infusion to maintain youthful skin and virility. The method? Every week, a small snake was boiled in milk, strained through lace, and applied to the royal cheeks before bed, followed by a whispered prayer to Venus. Results were mixed, but the court never mentioned the smell. Meanwhile, in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, the Mixtec shamans practiced coiling rites, where the priest would wrap a live serpent around the body of an aging leader and chant renewal hymns for 13 nights. If the snake remained calm, blessing. If it bit, trial. If it fell asleep, good sign, but possibly due to temperature. And across Southeast Asia, monks in isolated mountain caves steeped snake flesh in rice wine for decades, believing the resulting brew could extend the human life by 9 years per cup. No monk ever made it to cup number 2, but one did grow impressively long fingernails and claimed to dream of his own birth in reverse. In more modern times, the obsession didn't fade. It just got rebranded. In the early 20th century, the wealthy elite of Europe paid for snake gland injections, marketed as vital restoratives and wrinkle erasers. These were crude extracts, injected under the skin, often accompanied by jazz music and denial. A woman in Berlin claimed it made her dreams sharper. A man in Prague insisted it helped him hear flowers. Neither was invited to repeat interviews. And today, the search continues. Anti-aging creams with synthetic snake venom, nutritional supplements claiming to harness the serpent's regenerative properties, wellness retreats offering snake breathwork, where you hiss your traumas into the sky and eat smoothies shaped like coils. Even Hollywood had a moment. An A-list actor once funded a clinic where stem cells were fused with snake DNA to encourage muscular memory and on-screen charisma. The project was shut down after all the rats in the lab began sleeping in dramatic poses. So what is the lesson here? That some people will eat, drink, inject, rub, gargle, or dream of absolutely anything if you tell them it might stop time. And the snake plays along. It sheds. It renews. It never ages, at least not in a way we can see. It smiles if snakes could smile because it doesn't need immortality. It already has it, through us, through the stories, the jars, the creams, the songs, the teeth in the cabinet no one dares open anymore. Sleep well, dreamer, and if you dream of a serpent coiled around a silver hourglass, don't be afraid. It's just time, stretching. And now we slide into the present. Not the distant glow of torches or dusty apothecaries. Not temples nor velvet spas, but something more sterile, more digital, more marketable. Welcome to the age of modern snake myths. Here, the snake has shed its skin once more, this time into a logo, a font, a hashtag. Gone is the sizzling fat in a cast iron pan. Now, the serpent lives in glossy bottles, photoshopped infographics, and the occasional $99 wellness masterclass. Let's begin with a simple phrase. Snake venom peptide. What is it? A synthetic molecule designed to mimic the paralytic effect of real snake venom, specifically how it relaxes muscles. Do you inject it? No. You rub it on your forehead in the form of a cream called something like Serpent Lux, Venosilk 24, Wrinkle Slay, Toxin You Can Trust. The science is vague, the claims are bold, and the reviews are divided between "My crow's feet vanished" and "My wallet did." Some of these products feature gold foil, crushed pearls, or extracts from plants with names like Whispering Fong. One company, based in Switzerland but with a suspiciously Miami vibe, sells a product called Bite Me Night Repair Serum. The tagline? Sleep like prey, wake up predatory. Their Instagram is full of women in snakeskin bikinis sitting in lotus pose on glass rooftops. None of them have ever seen an actual snake. Meanwhile, on YouTube, influencers share their experiences with snake juice. No, not literal venom. This juice is a DIY electrolyte fasting drink popularized by a man named Cole Robinson, who shouts motivational threats while holding Tupperware. The original snake juice recipe includes water, potassium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, Epsom salt, vinegar, a firm belief that starvation equals enlightenment. It claims to cleanse toxins, melt fat, and reset your inner predator. Side effects may include dizziness, euphoria, and an unshakable desire to yell at people in a parking lot. And it doesn't end there. At high-end wellness retreats in Bali and Ibiza, you'll find snake breathwork, guided sessions where you channel your inner serpent by hissing, undulating, and making direct eye contact with strangers. The Coil Cleanse, a 5-day smoothie detox featuring ingredients that are serpent-inspired, though largely green and expensive. Venom Vinyas yoga in a heated room where participants wear faux snakeskin bodysuits and chant in Sanskrit while imagining their toxins fleeing in fear. One brochure reads, "Shed your limitations, strike your doubt, swallow your transformation." A bit much, but the turmeric shots are nice. Then there's the celebrity angle. A certain pop star with 3 perfume lines has launched Ouroboros, a genderless scent inspired by eternal renewal and slow danger. The bottle resembles a curled snake eating its tail. The fragrance allegedly includes notes of crushed fig, smoke, clean tile, and emotional heat. Meanwhile, an actor-turned-wellness entrepreneur sells Serpent salt, mineral-rich black sea salt, infused with serpent frequency, which, according to the label, is achieved by playing flute music to it during a full moon. It retails for $47 per jar, plus shipping, plus regret. And on TikTok, a new generation discovers snake-based healing all over again. Except now it's filtered, edited, and scored with lo-fi beats. Popular trends include, "I drank snake tea for 7 days and this happened snake fire," "Unboxing vintage snake oil I found in grandma's attic flushed face syringe," POV, "You're a snake spirit trying to help your ex detox emotionally." Some users even claim their pet snakes help them regulate anxiety. One woman sleeps with a boa named Kevin, who allegedly absorbs nightmares through gentle pressure. No clinical trials, but Kevin seems chill. Let's not forget the apps. Yes, there are apps. One called Slithers promises to align your circadian rhythm with the serpent's sleep cycle. Another, Venomify, gives you daily affirmations based on random snake facts. Today, be like the copperhead, calm, but coiled. It has over 50,000 downloads and a 3.7 star rating, down from 4.1 after an unfortunate update where the app hissed at users who skipped meditation. But perhaps the most fascinating modern mutation of snake medicine is its return to status symbol. In Silicon Valley, microdosing venom is whispered about in the same breath as nootropics and cryosleep pods. A few fringe performance clinics, offer controlled envenomation stimulation, where patients are injected with trace amounts of synthetic venom under medical supervision. They claim improved focus, memory retention, and predatory calm. Side effects include ego expansion and quoting Nietzsche at brunch. So what do we make of this? Is the snake now just a brand? A mood board? A hiss-shaped aesthetic? Or has it always been this way? From the jars in village kitchens, to the jars in curated skincare fridges, from whispered spells, to shouty TikTok trends, the snake, it seems, never cared what form it took, only that it remained useful, beautiful, slightly terrifying, a creature of healing, danger, and now content. So sleep now, under the watchful gaze of your smartphone's night mode. Let the hiss fade into a fan sound. Let your dreams be scented with venom number 7. And if you wake up with the sudden urge to coil, strike, or exfoliate, it's working. Every era has its healers. Some wear robes, some wear lab coats, and some wear ring lights. Welcome to the age of the modern snake doctor. Not the apothecary, not the barefoot herbalist, not even the leather-hatted showman with a jar full of fog. No, this snake doctor lives on your phone, in your feed, in your FYP, and he wants to save your life for just 3 payments of $49.99. Let's start with the basics. The digital snake doctor often has a 6-pack, a necklace that looks like it grants access to another dimension, a podcast called something like Uncoil the Mind, and a voice that's equal parts TED Talk and cult leader. He tells you, you've been lied to. Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about this ancient venom ritual I learned from a monk who lived inside a snake for 7 years. You believe him a little, not because it makes sense, but because he never blinks. One such figure, known online as Serpent Coach 23, sells a course called Venom Vitality. It includes a 30-day plan of intermittent fasting, breath work, and visualizing your spine as a rattlesnake, daily coiling affirmations, a 10-minute YouTube warm-up called Tongue Like a Viper, the testimonials, unverified, but passionate. One reads, after day 14, I could smell lies. By day 21, I stopped fearing death. I also lost 11 pounds and started dating someone named Basilisk. Meanwhile, another influencer at Snaked Up Mama built a following by combining essential oils, crystal grids, and aggressive whispering. She sells shedding kits, which include a bath bomb shaped like a coiled serpent, a playlist of hissing and flutes, a candle that allegedly invites personal molting, and she claims repeatedly that her skin has not aged since 2016. Her secret? Daily snake posture and eating only foods that start with the letter skeptical? Sure. But the comments are full of fire emojis and people asking about their sacral scales. Let's talk about biohackers now. In sleek, minimalist studios with chromed-out kettlebells and cold plunge tanks, they're injecting themselves with everything from stem cells to frog venom. Naturally, snakes have entered the chat. Some claim that microdosing synthetic neurotoxins based on snake venom can enhance focus, memory, and emotional shedding. These are the people who track their bowel movements via smartwatch, measure sleep by REM vibrational resonance, and drink green goo that smells like kelp and punishment. A popular trend among this crowd is neurocoiling, a 45-minute meditative session where you sit in a dark infrared pod, listen to recordings of jungle, snakes slithering through leaves, imagine your thoughts tightening, then striking your problems into submission. The app that guides this process is called Coil Mind, and it costs $12 per month, unless you want the advanced shed feature, which is extra. Let's not forget the in-person retreats, where modern snake doctors gather their followers under woven canopies to drink fermented mushroom tea, crawl on the ground in slow circles, and release ancestral toxins through collective serpentine breath. There's usually a snake there. Her name is usually Luna. She's usually very tired. Participants often emerge claiming, "I saw my past lives. One of them was a fork. I finally forgave my ex. I also hissed at him. I am now deeply afraid of garden hoses." Not to be outdone, the fitness world has joined in. At a boutique gym in LA called Ouroboros Athletics, you can attend Viper Core, an ab workout that involves striking crunches, Serpent Flow Yoga, where you move from Cobra pose to Python pose to existential panic pose, Shed Fit, a circuit workout paired with mantras like burn the old, coil the new. Merch includes sweatbands that say hiss or die. On the nutrition front, modern snake doctors offer diets like the Coil Cleanse, where you eat in spirals, zucchini noodles, cinnamon rolls, etc. The Venom Protocol, low carb, high fat, and somehow morally intimidating. The Fong Fast, water only on full moons, with a side of staring into reflective surfaces. One YouTuber claimed he gained reptilian clarity after fasting for 72 hours and meditating in a lizard tank. He now sells Fong-shaped water bottles and only responds to emails after sundown. And then there's the fashion. The snake doctor of today wears black robes with gold embroidery, snake rings on at least 2 fingers, neck tattoos that may or may not be temporary, sunglasses indoors. They speak of transformation, of sacred molting, of fear as fertilizer. And yes, sometimes they just really like attention. But here's the twist. People feel better. Placebo? Maybe. Performance? Absolutely. But sometimes the act of believing, of wrapping yourself in a narrative, is what heals. The modern snake doctor knows this. He doesn't sell medicine. He sells metaphor with merch. And you, tired and hopeful, scroll one more post, one more reel, and think, maybe I am ready to shed. So if tonight you dream of a man in a long coat, surrounded by candles, whispering affirmations into a coiled USB cord, you are not alone. The snake still heals, still sells, still slithers its way into our longing. And somewhere on a yoga mat or Zoom call, a modern doctor hisses, softly. At a certain point, healing stops being about health. It becomes about status. And the snake, ever adaptable, knows how to dress for the occasion. Welcome to the gilded end of the coil, the penthouse level of absurd medicine, where venom doesn't cure you, it elevates you. Let us begin in Monaco, at a private clinic perched above the sea, behind glass walls and a hedge that costs more than your car. Inside, a woman with perfect posture and suspiciously ageless cheeks is receiving a Viper lift. It's a non-invasive facial using synthetic snake venom peptides, chilled rose oil, and a microcurrent wand that hums in Latin. The treatment costs €850. The robe is silk. The playlist is ambient jungle, curated by a former shaman who now works in fragrance. A golden plaque on the wall reads, "Inspired by nature, engineered by money." Across the globe, in Seoul, the elite lineup for S23 Essence, a serum said to be derived from a rare Himalayan viper that sleeps in spirals and dreams in diamonds. The ingredients are vague. The marketing is crystal clear. Limited edition, numbered bottle, box made from ethically sourced moonlight. The price? $2,900 for 30 milliliters, or $3,200 if you want the velvet carrying pouch shaped like a fanged kiss. Meanwhile, in Paris, a boutique perfume house known only as L'Esprit du Serpent offers a fragrance called Cœur de Mamba. The bottle is jet black. The stopper is brass, molded into two intertwining cobras. The scent? Smoked vetiver, crushed ash, a drop of synthetic neurotoxin, just enough to make you feel a little dangerous. The founder, a former cryptozoologist turned perfumer, describes it as the olfactory equivalent of a threat whispered through silk. It sells for €1,200 per bottle. Clients include actors, diplomats, and a prince no one has seen in public since 2019. Let's talk fashion. At Milan Fashion Week, designer Gianluca Serpent released a line called "The Skin Between Worlds." Models slithered down the runway in snake-scale textured fabrics, venom-dyed silks, actual venom not included, accessories shaped like fangs, glands, and coiled fear. Each item came with a numbered card and a quote from ancient snake-centric scriptures, written in gold ink that may or may not be real. The finale? A full-length gown made of woven snakeskins, sustainably shed, of course, worn by a woman who moved so slowly the audience held their breath in sync. The collection sold out before the after-party began. Rumor has it one bag from the line includes a hidden compartment that hisses when opened. Even jewelry has caught the venom wave. At Aspies and Company, a London-based luxury jeweler, you can commission a personalized talisman, a locket infused with trace elements of purified snake venom, sealed in quartz and surrounded by sapphires. Each piece is said to be energetically balanced, spiritually coiled, mildly radioactive, but tastefully so. The catalog says, "Not suitable for children or people with fear." The wait list is currently 14 months. Not because they're busy, because exclusivity tastes better when it's delayed. And then there's gastronomy. Yes, people are now eating snake luxuriously. In Tokyo, a Michelin-starred restaurant called Ouroboros offers a tasting menu themed around rebirth through the coil. Courses include snake consommé with edible gold, viper tartare, ethically sourced from a farm where the snakes listen to Mozart, and a dessert shaped like a coiled python, filled with fermented lychee mousse and emotional cream. A single seat at the chef's table costs $1,450. Shoes are optional. Belief is not. Let's not forget the most absurd offering of all: venom-based longevity infusions. At a luxury health spa in the Swiss Alps, guests can opt for the Immortal Thread package: 3 nights in a thermal suite, blood ozone treatments, and intravenous microdosing of lab-simulated venom compounds said to activate ancestral resilience. The experience includes personalized sound therapy and a brief consultation with someone described only as the whispering biologist. Price tag, €22,000. Side effects include glowy skin, bizarre dreams, and a sudden desire to speak in iambic pentameter. And what does all this prove? That venom has been rebranded. It's no longer danger. It's desire. No longer the hiss in the grass, but the whisper on the marble countertop. A luxury, an indulgence, a story, bottled and embossed, priced for those who need to feel like healing should sting a little. Just enough to remind them they're alive, and richer than most. So as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine a bathtub of warm milk and snake oil, a robe that costs more than your rent, a snake curled gently around your wrist, not biting, just reminding you, you are precious, you are absurd, and you are very well moisturized. By now, you've seen the snake everywhere, in the pharmacy, in the temple, in the kitchen, in the cream, in the feed. But what if the place it lives most comfortably is in you? Tonight we shed the skin of history, the fat, the venom, the velvet, and look inward quietly at the serpent curled in the mind. Let's begin with a question. Why does the snake endure? Why not the frog? Or the butterfly? Why not the noble elk, the muscular lion, or the charmingly unqualified raccoon? Why the snake? Because it moves like a thought you don't want to have. Because it appears where it shouldn't. Because it stares and never blinks. Because it changes. From monster to medicine. From poison to perfume. From devil to doctor. And somewhere in that shifting coil we see ourselves. In dream psychology, the snake has long been a symbol of the unconscious. Freud, of course, thought it was entirely sexual, but he also thought umbrellas represented unresolved father issues, so we'll take that with a grain of powdered Freud. Jung saw the serpent as a bridge between the conscious and unconscious, between death and rebirth. A liminal being living beneath. It slides below. It waits. It whispers, not to scare you, but to remind you there's more beneath the floorboards. In therapy circles, recurring dreams of snakes are interpreted as repressed fear, intuition waking up, or the mind preparing to shed an old belief. And let's be honest, sometimes you just dream about snakes because you watched a documentary about cobras and your blanket felt weird. But often, very often, they come when something is about to change. The snake is the prelude to transformation. It doesn't do the healing. It announces it. It slithers through the mind and says, that thing you were avoiding? It's time. And that's not easy, because change isn't tidy. It's not a checklist. It's not a smoothie and an affirmation and suddenly you're reborn. No, change is awkward. It's itchy. It's lying on your back in metaphorical dirt while your skin peels off and you're not sure what's underneath. It's shedding, and it takes time. The snake knows this. It doesn't rush. It doesn't apologize for its silence. It simply leaves what no longer fits and moves on. That's why we fear it. Not because it bites, but because it does what we're afraid to do. Let go of the version of itself that no longer serves. In trauma therapy, snakes often appear in visualizations, unexpectedly. Patients will describe a dark shape coiling around old memories, a hiss beneath childhood, a flickering tongue near grief. And over time, with care, That snake becomes a guide, not a monster, not a toxin, presence, watching, witnessing, saying, yes, that hurt, and yes, we're still here. In meditation traditions, the Kundalini is often visualized as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. When awakened, it rises, bringing energy, clarity, sometimes chaos. It unknots you, or tries to. Many resist it, some chase it, few understand it, but the image remains. A snake sleeping inside you, patient, powerful, unimpressed by your to-do list. In literature, too, the serpent is ambiguous, tempts, but it also offers knowledge. It deceives, but also illuminates. In some stories, it is death. In others, it is the one who survives it. In you, it may be the voice you ignore, or the breath you hold too long, or the ache you refuse to name. But it's there, coiled, gentle, unblinking, waiting, not for fear, not for worship, but for acknowledgement, to say, yes, I am still with you, and I've seen every version of you, even the ones you buried, especially those. And maybe that's what real medicine is. Not a pill, not a potion, but a truth you finally look at, a fear you don't flinch from, a wound you name aloud. And maybe, just maybe, the snake isn't here to bite you. It's here to sit beside you, while you remember who you were, before the pain had a name. So tonight, as you sleep, listen. There may be no sound, just a stillness, just a warmth, just the quiet understanding that you've shed before, and you will again. And when you do, the serpent in your mind will smile, not with fangs, but with the peace of something ancient that's finally been seen. So here we are, at the end of the coil, not with a bang, not with a hiss, just a quiet slip of skin. You've traveled through tinctures and temples, through luxury spas and kitchen cabinets, through venom and velvet, potions and podcasts. You've followed the snake through deserts and dreams, through jars and jokes, through firelight and algorithm. And still, it moves, slow, deliberate, uninterested in applause, because the snake never needed you to believe in it. It only needed you to notice it. Let's review not the facts, not the science, but the truths beneath the laughter. The truth that people throughout history have always reached for something slippery when the answers ran dry. The truth that healing is rarely linear and often absurd. That belief can be medicine. That ritual can be balm. That a lie, if told gently enough, can carry a little truth inside it, like a fong hidden in a kiss. And that maybe, just maybe, some part of you has always understood this. Maybe that's why you listened, why you stayed, why even now your breath is just a little slower, your thoughts a little softer, your spine a little more aware of itself. Because even if you never drink snake tea, or rub adder ointment on your elbows, or whisper to a coiled bracelet named Kevin, you have still, in some small way, shed, not skin, but story. You've let something fall away, a belief, a tension, a need to always be correct. And in its place, stillness. It's not enlightenment. It's not transformation. It's not even particularly impressive. It's just this space, a pause, a breath, a little room in your chest where something else can now live. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just the delicious absence of urgency. The snake understands this. It doesn't rush. When it sheds, it doesn't panic. It doesn't scream. It simply finds a rock, corner, a quiet, and lets go. So maybe tonight you can do the same. Let go of the day's coils, the mental knots, the little deaths that came disguised as inboxes and headlines and dishes left too long in the sink. Let it fall behind you like a skin too tight to wear, and rest, because tomorrow will come, and you will wake, and the world will be loud again. But for now, you are quiet, coiled but calm, still but ready, not healing, just resting, which is often the first step toward anything worth healing at all. So sleep well, dreamer. You've walked through absurdity with grace. You've let the snake guide you, not as threat, not as joke, but as mirror. And now, as your breath deepens, as your limbs grow heavier, as your thoughts slow into little spirals of almost sleep, the snake too settles, not gone, not forgotten, just resting alongside you, a little warmer, a little wiser, and perhaps tonight in your dreams, you will shed